Therapists. What was your "you must be kidding me" moment? Story 1 was running an addiction treatment group. Some of the participants were referred by the court, usually for a DUI. The referral conditions were simple. If they finished treatment, they would not serve time in jail for the DUI. One of these court-referred DUI participants ran a limo service and showed up to the group with a tablet and cell phone. He spread things out and proceeded to treat the space as his personal office. I intervened, explaining he would not be able to conduct business while participating in the group. He gave me a look that would have unalived an ordinary person, said it was a busy time of year and he really needed to stay in touch with his drivers. I told him I understood, but he still needed to put the stuff away and pay attention. Lots of eye rolling. "Well, I can't believe this lady." And he still kept checking his phone and getting up to go outside and take calls. During the break, I told him his behavior was disruptive and he would have to leave. This seemed to make him happy. Until, I added, I would be telling the judge he did not complete treatment. For the first time, he seemed to slowly realize he was there for a reason and might actually end up in jail because of his behavior. He apologized and asked to stay, and settled down after that. A story where someone comes to their senses after behaving like a Karen? This is a good story to start off with. It is so easy to do our business and be connected anywhere we want, but I think that's taken away from a lot of people the sense of there's a time and a place for anything. There has to be appropriateness. Just because you can run your business from anywhere with a plug and a Wi-Fi connection doesn't mean that you should. Story 2. Had a patient who swallowed things as a self-injuring behavior. This individual would swallow anything metal and pointy, usually as a way of getting into the hospital or to stay in the hospital. At one point, they wanted to get surgeries or procedures to have the objects removed, but they weren't actually self-unaliving. One instance where they almost perished after ingesting a series of closed safety pins that ended up opening inside their stomach stopped them from eating things that wouldn't pass. Anyway, this person was upset that they were getting discharged as they wanted to stay until the beginning of the month. Hate to say it, but it's not uncommon to see people come in because they're out of benefits for the month. The usual complaints of being self-unaliving weren't working, because we know this person isn't actually self-unaliving. So they went and swallowed the iron from the Monopoly game. It didn't work. We still discharged him. But ever since, we haven't been allowed to have board games on the unit without staff supervision. Oh, that's unfortunate that this person's actions affect so many other people. At least it was just board games. I kind of shudder to think what else he would have grabbed to swallow that would have been disallowed later on. Maybe if they get him to swallow a cell phone, then they probably would disallow cell phones on the premises without supervision. That might make a lot of people who hate cell phones pretty happy. Story 3. Obligatory, not a therapist, but my hyper-conservative parents sent me to an addiction therapist because they found out I smoked magic lettuce occasionally in high school. The therapist they chose was a former White House substance czar, a renowned authority on C addiction and hard substance abuse, and an expert on rehabilitating extreme problem cases. My parents must have spent a fortune and pulled strings to get me an appointment. The first session, he asked me what substances I use. I told him I smoke magic lettuce like once a week, and that was it. After a few rounds of, "Come on, you can trust me," and "We can't begin treatment until you admit your problem," he realizes that I really do only smoke magic lettuce once in a while, and literally says, "You've got to be kidding me. Tell your parents you're a normal teenager and you don't need to come back." Oh, that must have been a glorious meeting with the parents. A substance czar from the White House telling you your issue is not a big deal. Those parents were probably just floored. I bet they wanted to complain to the therapist as well. It probably would have cost more to get in for a complaint. That's hilarious. Story 4. I was working surveillance one night at a psych ward, keeping a close watch on a mentally ill patient. Right before my shift started, I was briefed that the patient had started eating one of the light bulbs and attacked a nurse. At around 5 a.m., he woke up and saw me sitting there at the end of his bed. I said, "Good morning," and he didn't reply. About 15 minutes of silence went by before he stood up and stared out the window and said, "The person is most vulnerable while taking a dump." I didn't sit back down for the rest of my shift. Story 5. I'm a speech therapist. That counts, right? And I see this little kindergartner who also has massive behavior issues. We were working on language and pragmatics because he enjoys calling people stupid freaking shrews and little dirty whores and goddamn disgraces, most likely for attention. He will walk around the room calling me a stupid shrew, a smelly runt, and repeating the word shrew until he runs out of breath just to see if he can get a reaction from me. I would work on articulation with him because he doesn't actually say those words correctly, but I figured best to work on that later after I've got the swearing and name-calling down to a minimum. Story 6. Teenagers come to the session. Tell me they broke into their neighbor's house just for fun by smashing a window. Said they browsed their CD collection and weren't impressed with all the Spanish music. Said they searched the house for money, and when they got to the second floor, they heard a shower running. Someone was home. Teen ran out and went home and baked a lemon meringue pie and returned to the neighbor's house to give it to them as a gift. No answer at the door. Discussed needing to have a doc assess teens about mental health hospitalization. After I make a call to the police, the teen asks to use the washroom. Sure, the kid seems calm with what's happening. Then the teen bolts out of the office. Police did find them later when they showed up at their parents' office to borrow $20. That's just pure chaos there. You can't explain that away as, oh, kids will be kids. No. There's something going on there that's deeper than that. That kind of behavior is just chaos and randomness and unpredictability. Probably didn't like being in therapy either. Story 7. Not a therapist, but this is definitely a what the hell moment. I had to go to school counseling once. I was there because the fire alarm in the building rang 3 times that night. Once was a drill, the second is around dinner time, and the last one is around 3. I snapped at the last one and threatened the kid who caused it with a baseball bat. You know, those stupid indoor fire alarms. Anyway, I was sent to one session of counseling because, antisocial behavior and all that. Anyway, there was this dude who was also in for therapy. It was a group thing. The counselor asked him why he was here. He said he was here because he was caught by his roommate being passionate with a warmed-up shepherd pie, which was not his, in the kitchen. All of us seriously stopped and stared at him. Like, he wasn't saying this embarrassed or nothing. He just, matter-of-fact, said he did his roommate's shepherd pie. Story 8. One that sticks out in my mind was a mother that brought in her 5-year-old for therapy because she was into Disney princesses, which are clearly spicy. And since a 5-year-old is not spicy, this must clearly mean she's being abused by a close family member. I also worked with countless couples who have come to counseling for adultery, wherein adultery equals corn. One client even became self-unaliving because she caught her husband jerking off after not having spicy time with him for months. I know, everyone has different values, but come on, y'all. Story 9. Social work. Not therapy, but close enough. Me. We need to think of some new ways for you to discipline your daughters other than spanking. Client. Well, my parents did it to me and I turned out okay. Me stares at this high school dropout substance addict who has spent his entire life in and out of jail and halfway houses, can't get a job, and had his 3 kids removed for abuse and neglect. Okay. I actually did successfully turn this around in a gentle way and make him realize he hadn't actually turned out okay. How do you turn someone around like that? And in a gentle way. What kind of comparisons do you make? What kind of comparisons can you make? How many sessions did that take? Was there a lot of talking about this? I'm really curious as to what kind of process has to happen for this person to realize, hey, I'm not that okay. Story 10. Intake clinician here. What brings you in today? I'm here for corn addiction. At this point, not the weirdest thing I've heard. Let's go with that. Okay, tell me about it. I watch it 3 times a week for 15 minutes or so at a time. My girlfriend says I'm an addict and forced me to come in. Story 11. I used to work with children that have autism and Down syndrome, which means a lot of play therapy. I had my moment when one of my clients wanted to sit on my lap while we practiced reciting animal cards, followed by their corresponding noises. Forgot what animal noise I made that made him laugh so much that he ended up peeing on me from the laughter. That night was also date night. Story 12. Physical therapist. Intern back then. Old lady with dementia. I was walking with her in the hallway where visitors are as well. She says her pants are falling off. She can't use her hands to pull it up. She has a rollator where she takes a lot of support. She is wearing a skirt. Check it. And I say, nah, it's okay. She says it again. I say again that it's okay. 10 seconds later, a diaper full of feces drops to the floor, almost making her fall. Prevent that, but she dragged it a little bit and spreading the feces all over the floor. It smelled horrible. Okay. Did this therapist know she was wearing a diaper? Did this person need a diaper? They said she had dementia, so this probably wasn't some sort of fetish thing. This was kind of more of a miscommunication and vocabulary issue than it was about her dementia. I hope they were able to get things cleaned up. Story 13. Just today, I conducted a threat assessment on a first grader who told his teacher he wanted to stab himself with a knife and perish. Upon further questioning, he revealed that he and Dad watched The Walking Dead together, and last time on the show, he saw two people stab themselves to unaliving because they didn't want to get eaten by the zombies. Why are you even watching that show with a 6-year-old? Story 14. Not a therapist yet, but I'm currently taking a counseling and therapies university course, and we occasionally hear some stories from our professors in lectures or tutorials. One sticks out in my mind because I'd never seen an entire class shocked in silent horror before. A guest lecturer told us about a client he had who used a craft knife to cut open his own scrotum and took out what was inside because he wanted to look at it and play with it. Story 15. My client told me his family didn't appreciate his interest in guns, to which he proceeded to tell me he is always carrying. He then placed his gun on the table in front of me and asked if it made me nervous. It did, but we focused more about why he wanted to know if I was nervous, and it brought it back around to his family. From then on, I made sure to always have access to a door and never put the client between the door and myself again, just to be safe. Yeah, it's not like therapists can afford security guards or metal detectors. I really hope this person didn't run across any other situations like this again. It sounds like a power issue with this guy. He wanted people to be afraid of him, and it seems like guns were the only way to do that. Story 16. This recently happened to me. I have a client who is a daily Emdone doser. During our last session, he complained of sleep issues. Delving into this new issue, he described his solution to me. He saves his spit in a jar to drink at night when he is unable to sleep. Saves his spit in a jar to drink later. Story 17. I work as a residential aide in a treatment facility with a clinical team, so closely tied to a therapist, but not one. I generally think you've got to be kidding me when my coworkers leave all the paperwork for me to do on my shift and do crosswords on theirs. I'm looking at you, Jeff, you lazy bag. Story 18. Doctor I used to work with told me about a woman who tried to commit self-unaliving, so they put her in a safe room. She then proceeded to try and overdose on water, which he told me is possible, but really damn hard to do. Oh, the determination on this woman. I know it's possible in some ways to get drunk on water if you drink way too much. I think I read somewhere that it is possible to perish from too much water. I hope that girl got the help she needed. Story 19. A client was going to probate court and thought he'd dress up by putting a non-slip sock on his collar as a tie. Trying to be supportive, I told him, "Nice tie." To which he replied, "It's not a tie, it's a sock, stupid." Story 20. I'm late to this thread, but forensic therapist here. I work with paroled ex-offenders. One time, a guy I worked with urinated on my coworker's car in broad daylight. She was in the car. He made eye contact with her while he was doing it. His parole officer picked him up from the group 20 minutes later. He's currently having a little vacation at a state facility. Story 21. When I worked in bereavement, a client of mine used the term skid marks when discussing the accident. For some reason, there and then, the expression just caught me off guard. I joined the dots, and the corners of my mouth started to rise. In actuality, this may have only lasted a moment, but it felt like minutes. All the while, I was drawing blood as I chewed down on the inside of my cheeks. I felt like the worst human being alive. I just did a video about when some of the most inappropriate times happened where someone laughed. I think this story would have fit in that one as well. To be honest, I thought the same thing as this guy. It's a tragic accident this guy is trying to process. I'm glad he was able to keep it under control. Story 22. Had a client who was told he absolutely had to start losing weight, else he would become troublingly diabetic and begin losing appendages. He didn't put much effort in, eventually having his foot amputated. Time after that I saw him, I had to explain that having a foot amputated did not count as half a stone towards his weight loss targets. He was genuinely mortified. Story 23. My mother and brother made me go with them to family counseling. They mostly discussed the issue that I didn't watch the news with them, and I'd rather watch Home and Away or Neighbors. I was 13. And that I didn't know anything about politics. I flat out refused to go after 2 sessions of 3 of them ganging up on me and telling me to be more involved with their interests. What 13-year-old girl likes discussing politics? Story 24. Had a patient once with auditory hallucinations. They suddenly decided I was the voice, and they had to do whatever I said. So I encouraged them to do positive things for others, and always be nice to their mother. Well, good for not taking advantage of the poor person, but that definitely has to not be a permanent solution. At some point, you have to address why they're having these hallucinations. What would be the next course of action in something like that? Story 25. I'm physically non-monogamous. I'm afraid my boyfriend is cheating on me with his female friends, both from the same person during the same conversation. Story 26. Not a therapist, but I was a volunteer for a school for special kids, and this hyperactive kid of age 7 started violating an autistic girl who had no idea what is going on. Story 27. Not a therapist, but I met a guy on a chairlift who worked with a client who associated moving past 3 miles per hour with instant unaliving. Man, I'm glad that sequel to Speed didn't go through. That one sounds boring. And seriously, you met this guy on a ski lift? I know we joke about how doctors live it up like fat cats, but really? I can appreciate needing a break, actually. I hope the ski trip did him well. Story 28. I had a middle schooler get arrested for truancy in the middle of an IQ test. He scored in the gifted range. Story 29. I had a group of 5 insane people come in to discuss who should clean the dishes. Story 30. You dropped this. Serious. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.